That'd be interesting. Get
Now,
your deeds out and look at them.
The Scots, he fought in the French and Indian War, Alexander, and he gave the Chickies Tavern to his brother-in-law's son, or his sister's son, his nephew, because he tended to farm while Alexander Scott was all fighting the French and Indian War. And when he come back, a guy by the name of Hugh Pendon, which you will get in there, had the Chickies Tavern. Now we here in Salunga are sitting on a lot of history, not down here, but up towards Chickies, because it's a known fact that General Washington, like the Battle of Brandywine and the massacre of Downingtown, these guys come up here, and where Steinmetz's house was a blacksmith shop. And then he would get, and the same way they'd go to Mountjoy too. In other words, the whole area this was the southern area of it here. And it would go the whole way on up into Mountjoy, where the troops would have R&R and get anything fixed that they could get fixed before they would go on back for battle again. But there's a lot of history. Now the Scots were strongly responsible for forming the Donegal Church, the witness tree and that up there.
Scott people.
The Scott people, yeah, the Alexander
family.
Scott, Joshua Scott, the family of Scots.
That isn't the only time that house up there where Herb Hornberger lives was a tavern.
It was always a tavern. It was always a tavern until Herb bought it or whatever.
Tavern Hotel.
Yeah, Tavern Hotel. And it was later called the Washington Hotel.
Well, you know who had it?
No.
Chris Furr.
Chris Herb. Well, what was it called then?
A boarding house. He had a couple of girls working there. It's speakeasy in plain words, you know. And then he sold that. I don't know who he sold that to. Don't think he sold to Herb then yet. But then he bought a place up at Caughnawaga and had motels, little cabins up there, you know, and he had a place up there.
That was a boarding houses.
Yeah, it still is that kid. I don't know.
Well, listen, when I carried newspapers up there, though, that was like a tourist home, because that's where Ely and Ely Good and his brother lived.
Ely Good was the guy that had the gas station.
Yeah, Ely Good. Ely
well,
and John.
That's who had it then.
No, they didn't. They stayed up in that place.
Oh.
There was a guy, and every time I saw this man, when I delivered papers and collected, he always had a suit and a tie on. He owned that home, and it was a tourist home. With all them rooms, that's when the main road we used to run through Chickies, and that's what it was during a tourist home.
I don't remember who that would have been.
I don't know either, but I know him and his wife were older people, and they were always well dressed like they were wealthy people. And Ely stayed in a room up there, and Johnny's brother stayed in a room, and then it went out of business because they moved around 230, the 3-lane in, and they eliminated up there, but he kept the gas station open. Ely Good kept the gas station open. We boogered him half to death.
Yeah.
But that was still a tourist home up there. They didn't do much business. And then eventually, I don't know who they sold it to down the line then. It'd be interesting to see. Herb would know who owned it during the war years.
Well, Herb claims that I was just talking to Herb here some time ago. He claims that they used the original. He claims it was a stone house. As a Chickies Tavern, it was a stone house.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tore that down, and they used the same foundation as they have it now in brick.
To rebuild it in brick.
To rebuild it into brick. He said because you can tell downstairs where the original foundation was. In other words, they did an enlarged outfit.
Well, that's a big place. I don't know.
Oh yes, that is a very big place. You bet. You know. But General Washington stayed there. Now I'm not to prove that General Washington stayed in Salunga. So help me, I'm going to prove it.
Rode his horse down Main Street.
Yes, sir. Positively,
well,
absolutely.
Abe Lincoln rode the train across Jim Way's property here,
positively.
too.
Positively.
On his way to Gettysburg Address.
There's a lot of history that is here that is just waiting to be brought up.
Yeah.
But it's buried so deep sometimes you can't find it. But I got a lot there that bringing some of it out.
Okay, we're going to take another break here, and then we're going to get into some of his stories I want to get at. You'll be interested in these. Okay, now we're going.
Look through there and see.
Who was the original owner of Heaston's Mill? Musselman.
Annie Musselman. Annie Musselman.
And then we're trying to find out about...
would have been Melly Newcomer's wife's foster mother, I guess.
While he's looking for that...
Aunt Annie Musselman, I call her.
While he's looking for that, Wilbur Heaston tells me that it happened at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Everybody was in church. Old Ed Samaras come out his back door, and he's seen on the mill roof a fire that you could have covered over with your hat. But there was no fire company in town, and everybody was in church. There was nothing but ringing church bells and things like that to get the people out. And by the time the people got organized, the whole mill was gone. And then the wind come up, and they almost burnt the whole town down. And Wilbur relates that his mother used to have a bucket that was painted. And everybody in town got buckets. And they formed a bucket brigade. And somehow or another, the Heaston bucket got in that was painted. And that was being used as bucket brigade with the rest of the buckets in town. Now, I always thought that this was earlier, but this was sometime in 1910.
1910 is when they, that's when that was...
At 10 o'clock in the morning. And also...
Stopper store.
That's right.
Stopper. Okay.
Not Strickler, Stopper.
And this A.B. Grider's cigar factory was up here across from the school.
Yep.
Yeah, right? That double house up there.
Yeah, right here's a picture of it.
Yeah. Frank Aston worked there.
Okay, now do you remember...
Harry Eshelman, Scott Eshelman.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the wash machine factory was over here?
Wash machine factory?
Yeah, right back of Bummy's here in the barn.
Well, who had that?
I don't know, but they made wash machine. They made wash machine.
No, the only wash machine factory I knew of was Brenneman Brothers at Gladysville.
Yeah. Well, this was supposed to be, this was an awfully big barn over here.
I know it was. Huge barn.
Yeah, and that was where they were supposedly made
I never heard that.
I never heard.
Not that I know
We used to get in there and sneak around.
The first that I had, when I was a kid, first I remember why Abe Kreider had his thrashing rigs in there.
Yeah, well, that was before that. Then Culp up back street here. What was his name? Abe Culp.
Abe
Culp.
Yeah. Then he had the thrashing machines after.
Yeah.
Okay, now the first fire engine, or the first fire wagon that was in Slunga, was a wagon. And the wheels off of that, when they made it from a wagon and to motorize it, which is, they put it on the back of that Larrabee up there that Jim Hunberger has now. It's in the old firehouse. The wheels, Bummy bought for 50 cents. And they were in the barn when it burned down.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me that. I know he had parts of the fire.
He had the wheels of the fire. And the back wheels were bigger than the front wheels. And they used to have a tongue out with a thing in there that the guys would get a hold of. And they'd run down through town. Now, okay. Now, do you remember when that fire engine was kept up where Carl Hamilton lives now in the Hamilton barn?
Not really.
Okay, now do you remember of a meeting place being in the top of the barn?
There's where our band rehearsed.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
The band rehearsed there.
The fire engine was kept in the bottom.
And the Slunga band rehearsed it.
John Hamilton's barn.
John Hamilton's barn. And Jake Garrett's barn upstairs. That's where Sammy Schurtzer's place. And originally, I told you, on the top of the barber shop where your grandpa had a barber shop, down where the gas station would have been there.
John Cooper's.
Cooper's
had the gas station.
Yeah.
Up there was a building there. I think Bert Heaston bought that, and bought it especially for my dad to have a barber shop and for a band hall to practice in the band.
Okay, now these history books here are Lancaster County. I looked for Way, and I can't find no by the name of Way. Is there any other names while you're talking here that I'll look for that that maybe will make mention of you? In other words, did Way get married to somebody else? And
what about the Habeckers?
Well, my grandma and grandpa's maiden name was Schultz my grandmother, and my grandpa's name was Moon, M-O-H-N. M-O-H-N. But,
now, while he's looking them up there, let me ask you a couple of these questions here.
okay. What do you
I
got?
want to know which Myers was killed by a train.
Arlie, I guess.
A-R-L-I-E.
I don't know if his name was Arthur or Alan or what, but they call him Arlie Myers.
Well, who was he?
That would have been Ralph and Ed's and Pete's and Bill's and Charlie's brother, a young brother. And whenever we were kids, they wanted to keep you off the railroad track. My mother would say, "Now you stay off the railroad track or you'll get killed like Arlie Myers."
Yeah, well, he would have been Pete's and Charlie's brother.
Old Pete and Charlie.
Oh, that's
old,
all right.
not the ones you're thinking of.
Okay, I didn't know them. The only
Would
ones
have been Ed J. Myers and Paul Myers, and that was Pete, and Ralph, and Charles, and Bill, brother, Arlie Myers. And people used to go across the railroad track regularly, you know. Down there was a regular path there right next to the warehouse.
Well, I know that. There
Where
was
Pumpkin
paths
Daddies-
all up and down here when I was a kid. I used to go to take my newspapers across the path to Hopsy Piper's farm and then up to Chickies.
Oh, yeah, we're down and up.
They used to have all kind of paths. across there.
Yeah. And right down there at the warehouse, you'd come out over right where Punky Dadisman, where Punky Dadisman lived. And
In the corner.
when you're talking about Punky Dadisman, I don't know if it's a good thing to talk about this or not. But when I was knee-high to Grasshopper, I can remember when the loafers up at the loafers bench up at Sam Eby's store used to contradict Punky Alan Dadisman, Punky we called him, and Harry Dadisman, who later lived up here, you know, Johnny Dadisman's daddy, and they used to contradict him with what they said, and one some guy like Al Keller or whatever said, after these Dadismans would leave, they'd say, "You know what? Harry and Punky tell the same damn lie so often they start to believe it themselves." I see that. That was an old saying.
Harry lived up here where McKee's lived, didn't he?
Yeah.
In his later years.
He had a brass foundry.
I
You ever know that?
No.
Harry Dadisman had a band. You remember that?
No.
Yeah, he had a brass foundry. See, they both worked at the Keystone Boiler Works at Landisville. In fact, that's where your grandpa and Uncle Joe worked
Yeah.
before they were the garage business and the plumbing business. I think Joe worked down there and your daddy when they were, 12, 14 years old.
Well, Dad worked. Dad used to say about J. Miller Eshelman, the stone quarry. Okay, before that was a stone quarry. He would build bridges.
No, construction.
Yeah, bridge builder.
No, I didn't know that.
Okay, now at E.B. Chickies Road, down there where it goes across the Chickies, that was one he built, and then of course down the creek further was one they built,
Yeah.
and then out at Bender, what we know as Bender's Mill. Now, my dad helped build those three bridges as he was got out of school and
Well, Bender's Mill's the one down E.B. Chickies Road.
or not the Bender's, on out further.
Newcomers,
Newcomers Mill, yeah.
newcomers.
There's two bridges there. Eshelman built those 5 bridges that Dad helped on, those five bridges.
You know what that was called before newcomers lived out there? That was called Moore's Mill.
Moore's Mill.
That's the one out where M&R Farms is.
Well,
Oh, you're in the Garfield Road now.
yeah. That
No,
one
this
that
Bender's Mill is right out here.
okay, and then the next bridge down is where you go to M&R.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was built about the same time.
Oh, your Newcomers is out there. The 2 bridges out
Right,
of Newcomers. All
right.
right. Yeah.
So there's actually 4 bridges that Eshelman built right within a short
Yes,
distance there.
yeah.
I can't find the name. Can you give me any other names? Morley, I can't find.
What's that?
Can you give me other names on here? Morley, I couldn't find.
More.
More.
I mean,
no.
Moon.
Moon, M-O-H-N.
No, can't
Moon.
find it.
Well, there's a lot of Schultzes, I'm sure. They're Germans.
Well, now wait. Let's
Schultz.
Schultz.
Bernie and George's house up here, what was that, a blacksmith shop?
That on the back end where the bank came down, there's where his great uncle and Uncle Bill, William Cooper, and old Dave Cooper had a blacksmith shop. And up above was like a tobacco shed.
The main house.
The main house was a tobacco shed. Now, when Rube Miller first moved around here, when he built the house out here in Brant Boulevard,
beside where the
before that house was built, he had to find a place to live. And he had 3, 4 boys and a daughter, Grace, Hen, Jocks, Pete, and Jim, right? Reuben Jr.
Yeah.
They lived in that barn up there until the house was built, right across from where our barber shop was at that time, right across the street. And that's where Rube Miller's family lived during they shifted, like they say, they shifted in that old barn there until his house was built. Then, at that time, there was no buildings between there, the street here, and down at the next street down. There was no buildings there. The next building that was built was a garage at Stamens. Then Ferris had that house built.
You mean from this barn here down to Stony Battery Road?
That's right. No, not Stony Battery. Down to Garman's.
Where's Garman's at?
Roy Garman's.
I don't know.
The brick house there.
People looking at this thing here don't know where the hell that's at.
Well, I said the next street down here.
Where,
what is it?
Railroad
Street.
Railroad Street.
Right across from the old firehouse. That was Garman's.
Okay.
Railroad Street. Give street name.
Okay. Now then, Doc Kendick bought the lots from Stamens up to the corner. And then he built a house out of the old barn, or tobacco shed. And he tore down some buildings in his farm. He had 5 farms at that time. He tore down some buildings that they didn't use, and he built the house here where Johnny Kendick lived in a little house, and Ben Kendick lived here where the blacksmith shop was.
I remember when Ben lived there.
Farlands was, okay. And then Johnny Kendick lived in the little house, and then Charlie Myers bought that. And that's where Charlie Myers' widow still lives there.
Williams lived in there when I was a kid.
Williams.
Because they died and they had a big sale there. Now, where were they in there?
Well, they rented it from Doc Kendick then.
All right. Because Williams lived in there when they died and they sold it. One of them died or both died. And one moved out and they had a big sale there. And that's when Charlie moved in because he lived down here. In this double house, half of our house, and this is where he moved up there.
Well, that must have been after Johnny Kendick moved up in the big.
He probably did.
Big house.
I don't remember Johnny Kendick living in there, but I do remember Williams is living in there.
Don't you remember Johnny Kendick living in there?
Nope. I remember Williams is living in there, 2 old people, and I remember Ben Kendick living up here across from us at the barber shop.
Well, Johnny Kendick lived in there, and that's what they.
Because I used to spend a lot of time at Blessings, and we used to sit there and look across the street, and the 2 old Williams people lived over there.
Yeah. There you go.
Well,
You'd remember that better than I do.
What the Lansville Hotel doesn't hold much significance, does it?
The only thing I can tell you much about that is before Prohibition, Dick Nisley's daddy had it, and I don't remember much before that, but Dick Nisley's daddy had that hotel, and when he couldn't sell booze, they always had rooms to rent, and a lot of the people.
Chicken and waffles on Sunday.
Road worker, you had chicken and waffles every Sunday. They had chicken and waffle dinners, and at that before Nisley's had it was called the Sycamore Hotel. That was the name of the Lanesville Hotel. Did you know that? Sycamore Hotel.
Yeah, I heard that. Tell us about that. Is that all you know about the Lanesville Hotel?
Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know too much about it years ago, although we used to play for dances in the ballroom.
Well,
1932.
That's the stuff we want to hear.
Before then, yeah. We had a pretty good...
That was during Prohibition.
Yeah, we had a pretty good dance orchestra. had Fred Kozer was an undertaker. Frank Eshelman was a farmer.
What they play?
Frank Eshelman played piano.
Who?
Frank Eshelman, a farmer.
Played piano? I know Fred Kozer
played trombone. George Shank, who later was a justice, played saxophone, clarinet. Russell Geist worked psycho. He played banjo and guitar. And who else? Now, John Hurd was a butcher.
He played sax.
Played saxophone. And, well, when you get into people that aren't from around here.
What'd you play?
But I played trumpet, but I played drums for the most part.
Who was the leader?
I was.
All right.
Sit down. Earl Mumo and Freddie Holbein played violins. Now, we had a big band, 15 pieces, and we'd import my cousin from Montjoy, Dick Heisey. Charlie only ever played clarinet. He played with the bands. It wasn't no dance band. But we'd import guys. Rudy Still from Roarstown played a violin. We had 3 violins, and we had 15 pieces. Most of the time, we had 8 or about 7, 8 when we played for dances. But never the good old days. $2 a night, and all you could eat and drink.
Where you played at Mount Joy? Was that place back there on South
Fun Bars.
North Barber Street.
North Barber Street. And up at Andy Brown's. Ballroom.
And down to Hostetter's Play Bar.
They were speakeasies.
Yeah, speaking of speakeasies, we were down that the Lansville racetrack there. By the way, I called Marty. We'll get together and go to those racetracks here in a couple of weeks. I probably have to work next week. This Bodie house down here where Andy Fleckenstein had the service station across from.
Yeah, that was there, that gas station where Andy Itzke Miller had that. Itzke Miller.
That's the corner of Nisley Road and 230.
Yeah, that little gas station there. Before that's prohibition. You know, it was illegal. And Itzke Miller was a junk dealer in Lancaster, and an ugly-looking so-and-so he was. But he had some pretty girls there.
Across the street was his racetrack.
Across the street was the Lansville Speedway. Yeah.
And the Sung Indians played football.
Yeah, that's right. We had a football team there. We had a good We tied for the county championship with Columbia in 1932. And Amos Herr and Dick Nisley, Cy Minnick, Pete Miller.
Jocks played, didn't he?
Who?
Jocks
played. Wilbur Easton, Dutch Keller, Cliff Dyer, lived in Lansville.
What's his name? Mim's husband.
Oh yeah, Hen Schneider from Montjoy. We had Hen Schneider, Dutch Gerber, and Solly Gutschall, and Mike Showalter from Montjoy. And from Lancaster, we had Herb Graw, and we called him Lena Blackburn. We had 2 or 3 guys from Lancaster. Bob Veit and Amos were varsity players with F&M. And Amos used to tell Pete Miller, now when you get the ball, you run right between Veit and my fanny. And they made a hole. He gave 12, 15 yards every time. They wore out, Amos and Veit wore out 5 Hearn Company defensive linemen that day. They really wore them out.
Yeah, who's the coach of that team?
I coached a dumb thing. I was in everything. Not much money, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, how many years did that last, the Slung Indians?
I think that's the only year we played, in 1932. Come to think of it.
Now, there was a lot of them old uniforms around here.
You know, we had a high school team back in the 20s when Bill Weaver taught high school at Lansville High School. It was then, was at Hempfield, and we had a pretty good team, but we didn't win many games. I think we tied one game, but we lost most of them. But we had to play independent teams. There weren't any high school teams except Lancaster High, and they were next to state champions. So we didn't do so good.
Well, battery's getting down there. I only had one other question here. I want to hear that story about the man and his false teeth.
Oh, with Hetty Waitman.
Yeah.
You think you ought to put that on there?
Yeah, what the heck?
Well, in those days, you know, like we're talking about the old blacksmiths and Samba girl, and first of all, I got to say, Scott Eshelman talking about speakeasies and prohibition and all this and that. This had to be before prohibition was enforced, I would think. When I'm talking about, I used to say to, I said to Scott Eshelman one time, do you really like whiskey?
Which Scott Eshelman is this? The old
man? Old Scott, had Eshelman's brother. I said, do you really like whiskey? He said, nothing tastes better to me than a double shot of whiskey first thing in the morning.
Jeez.
So they used to go up to Mountjoy at Al Stump's down Farmer's Inn, down the Boondocks in Mountjoy. And by the way, Al Stump's wife, Florence Pickle, was your grandma's cousin, my mother's cousin. But that's where they would go.
Where's the Farmer's Inn? What's the Farmer's Inn today?
Yeah, down at the bottom there, down in the Manor, going over the road over to Manor, up in Mountjoy.
All right.
Down where the stockyards were, down in there.
I don't know where that's at.
But anyhow, they didn't have alcoholics in those days. They were weekend drunks. And they'd go up to Mountjoy and they'd get a load on and they'd come home. The trolley car come down about midnight or a little bit later, you know. And one time, Henny Waitman had a pretty good load on, and when he got off the trolley car, why, he had a vomit, so he vomited and went home that night. When he
That's
got
not
home.
where Joe... Okay, this, what was his name?
Where did he finish up?
What was his name? The Weidman that lost his false teeth?
Oh,
You know what you were talking about?
Lusker, no, wait one second.
Henny Weidman?
Henny Weidman from Mountjoy.
Yeah, he came home. No, he wasn't from Mountjoy, was he?
Yeah, no, he was from up Chickies. He lived up in Chickies.
Came home from Mountjoy in the trolley.
He lived down there around where Rosenfeld lives down.
Well, he
Not
lives
Henry Rosenfeld.
He lives down there where the
George
Weidman house was.
Yeah, down there.
Because I used to go fishing up there with
Yeah.
the Dutch Weidman, and the Weidmans all lived in that
Right
house.
up there, yeah. And then
He came home from Mountjoy in a drinking bout, and they got off the trolley out here at the station where Joe Cooper has his Sunset trailer park, right?
yeah.
Then what happened?
Well, and he was sick, and he vomited, and of course he went home. He went home that night, and the next morning he get up. He found he didn't have his teeth. He lost his teeth when he was vomiting. So he came back down to the road there, called Prospect Road, where the trolley stopped. He picked up the teeth out of his disaster and put them right back in his mouth. He didn't take them home and wash them or anything. And that was the daddy of Harlan Waitman was on that. It's in the picture of that Way's barber shop.
Sitting in the barber chair.
On the front chair with he has clasps on his legs. He must have been riding bicycle. In them days they didn't have guards and sprockets. And
that was Dal Waitman's brother then. The guy.
No,
in the
it would have been
chair.
a cousin.
A cousin.
Would have been a cousin. Henny Waitman and Petey Waitman were brothers. So it would have been a cousin of Dally Waitman.
Okay, what notes do you have there?
Well, I have some notes here of Al Keller was a house painter, used furniture dealer. You remember he had a used furniture shop? And Jake Biddick was in the used furniture business when he passed away, and they had sale. They could hardly get in his garage. Somebody said.
He was noted. Jake Biddick was noted for he'd have a coupe, and he could never. They could never understand how you get so much furniture on this. When you go to a sale, how you could come back with so much furniture, and it was a coupe
stacked high.
Stacked high, and they never knew how they could get that much furniture.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Ropes tied around it and everything.
Yeah. Jake.
Well, did he have the place back at Keller's there, that furniture place?
At one time, Johnny Bender was in the used furniture business with Al Keller.
Well, Al's the guy
used to go to a sale over at Manumsog place. Do you remember that?
No.
I remember the furniture place because Al Keller lived there. That's back of Charlie Paulus's house.
Yeah, Paulus is living there.
Is that building there yet?
Well, the furniture store's there, and Paulus is in the front, and then the house where Al Keller lived is right across the alley.
Yeah, and the last house in Sloan.
The furniture place is still there.
Oh yes, you bet.
Oh yeah. That's Charlie Paulus owns
that. That alley.
Charlie Paulus
very
owns
often.
that. I go up that alley every day.
Don't remember. And Doc Cudnick, of course, you guys don't remember going to the doctor and paying 50 cents for an office call.
Oh, I didn't pay it. I went. And all these pills.
Doc Kendick used to give you the best cough medicine in the place. And he used to, I don't know if you remember this, but he used to put his hand in the jug and he'd pour it like that, and get this and pour it. And he never measured nothing, just by sight. And the best 50-cent cough medicine in our time now is 50 cents. Now I'll tell you something else. My mother found a bottle of cough medicine that wasn't even open from Doc Kendick. Original, everything was original. Yeah. And she gave it to Millie Dassman.
Is that right?
Yeah, Millie has it. Millie has an original bottle of Doc Kendick's cough syrup.
Yeah. Well, and then another thing that would be interesting, I think, is that Mellie Newcomer, when he was a kid, 12 years old.
I'm still here.
Huh?
Who? Mellie Newcomer?
Mellie Newcomer, when he was about what happened?
Nothing.
He flipped his lid.
I wanted to make sure they knew I was still here.
Now, Mellie Newcomer used to bring the uptown mail. The post office was at Simon Easton's store. But Sam Eby had a branch office up at his store up in